it's great to be able to chat between countries here and really get together in these COVID times, bringing together the UK, California, and Switzerland. And for anyone who's looking at the various lighting in these rooms, you try and guess who is in which place.
Yes. What time?
Yeah. So we're thinking a lot about service learning, and one of the challenges that schools have is organizing it. Mm-hmm. It sounds fantastic, and the way that you describe it, Kathy, is inspirational, and schools will say, we want to do that. But how can you organize it when you have disciplines and subjects in the school, and we want the service to emerge from curriculum, but how can we organize it so that it's meaningful and purposeful?
Well, that's the $60 million question, isn't it? Isn't that the question? So I think one of the things we have to do when we look at a school is look at who's the keeper of the content in a way. You know, if you have a curriculum coordinator, for example, or people who fill that kind of a role, they need to understand what service learning is. I often say the curriculum coordinator is the keeper of the holy grail related to service learning. If they're not on board or understand what it is, it's going to be very hard to move this forward in an academic context. However, if there is alignment and there's an understanding with whoever are those leaders or those thinkers, and it could be group leaders, teacher leaders, just different, they need to understand what service learning really is. Because unfortunately, there still is, even after all this time, a key misconception that service learning is an add-on, that we teach our academics and then we do something good on the side. But that's not what it is. Service learning can't, service can be done that way. Then it's more like community service, or service. But if we want to connect it to learning, then we really need to see, well, both what is the knowledge we want young people to gain by doing this kind of educational approach, what are the skills that we want them to gain, and what kind of dispositions do we want to bring to the forefront or perspectives. So when we identify those, we can see service learning is a valuable pedagogy that really aligns with other pedagogies. People always say to me, this sounds like inquiry method. Well, it is an inquiry method. In fact, service learning was a method of inquiry before the term inquiry method was invented. It's always been based on inquiry. It's also like the scientific method. So it's really just good teaching. And when people see that alignment, it doesn't seem as mysterious or challenging. That whatever you do, whatever content you want to teach, whether it's about rocks or whether it's about a novel and the character changes and development of a novel, you have to still do a form of investigation. You have to take the learning deeper. You have to then prepare the content you've learned to use in some way to take some form of action, whether it's writing an essay or a test. So why not also make it something of value to others and the community? So it's really just a good teaching process. When people understand that and see some good examples of how it can be done. And one of the things about my book, and while it's been out for a little while, it still has great examples of what teachers have been doing that really connect it to academic curriculums. So when teachers get good examples of what it is, they start saying, I could do this, and see the possibility. And we have so many wonderful teachers out there, I just have to say that, who do such good work. Very often they're very close to doing service learning. They just need to say, oh, if I only did this and we actually used what we did. I'll give you an example. So I have an example that I'd love to share. When my daughter was in second grade, they had to learn about a person in history, in California history. So I'm the one from California, if that was the question. So she picked the comedian Lucille Ball, who is a wonderful comic. And she was so interested in her that I showed her this little book, and she read the adult book. It was the first time she read like a 400-page book to learn about Lucille Ball. She was just crazy, and she memorized one of her comic monologues, and all the students worked that hard to become the person. It wasn't just read about them and learn about them. They had to become the person. And when they actually did their monologues about the person, they were only sharing that with their class and with a few parents who happened to have some free time to sit in there. And it was a huge loss. It's a huge loss. Imagine if they just walked 3 blocks down the street to a retirement community and performed those to the seniors who live there. Yeah. What would that have changed for the students and for the community? It would also have elevated the student work. When you have an audience, you work harder, you're more excited. They would have learned so much more, and then they could have heard stories about what these people knew of these. It was such a lost opportunity. So we can take so many things that we're doing and say, how do we extend this good learning? Who would benefit from learning by it? What can we create that would help someone else? We can really reframe what we're doing so that we're extending it into acts of meaning and purpose. And I said in an earlier episode that it answers the why. Why are we learning this? Why am I working so hard? And it gives young people a real sense of connection. And I think that's what we're missing right now. And especially in these times, we can really work in this direction. Also, service learning is an incredibly powerful tool for intersected learning, for, when we bring, different contents together. So when you want to do interdisciplinary learning, especially in middle school years, it's just ideal to take a theme and let all the classes revolve around that and find their way in. Also in high school, where we should be doing more interdisciplinary learning, it's an avenue to bring that together there as well.
Kathy, I think you've really
go on, sorry.
I think you've really identified two things here for teachers to remember as a kind of teacher takeaway. And one is that there's a very, very high chance that something they're doing in the curriculum just needs a few tweaks, and it elevates it and makes it really meaningful service learning. And the other thing is for teachers to just get started. I think there can almost be an analysis paralysis, or a fear of trying something in case they're getting it wrong, or the thought that, well, now I've got to change every single unit planner throughout my whole year. And I think I'm always saying this to teachers when I go and do teacher training, and it not necessarily about service learning, but just take that first step, choose that one project, choose that one unit of learning, and tweak that, and then reflect, make space to stop, lean back, and then move forward again. So don't let perfection get in the way of doing something.
And I think it's worth pointing out as well that many curricula around the world believe in an inquiry-based approach. And there are inquiry cycles published by the IB or anybody else, by Kolb. The Kath Murdoch one is a favorite one of mine. And all inquiry cycles result in an action. Otherwise, why did you inquire? That would be my point.
Right, and everything about service learning is inquiry. And one of the things I love to do when I work at any grade level in curriculum design is people think I have to do all my service in all 5 stages in one unit, but you don't. You might start the investigation if you're doing a unit on natural resources, and also during that first unit, you might really focus on observation in the MISO method. And then the second unit might be around people and time and place, where service learning can help create bridges between each of the units, so you unify the entire year, and through the different units, you're building this capacity to take meaningful action. It doesn't always have to be in one unit. It might be the connecting thread between the units. So I love helping to map these ideas out, and it's a shift in thinking so that we're really seeing that our whole year is connected through action. It doesn't just happen in certain discrete sections. And that the idea of how we learn, and how we do inquiry through the MISO method, meeting, interview, survey, observation, can spread out in different units as well. So there's so much, dare I say, fun teachers can have in rethinking how they're going to do their curriculum, and using service learning as part of the vehicle to move the learning forward. It shouldn't stop the learning. Service learning should always move the learning forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's very, very clear. Thanks.